So I don't even know what the, the study of this was. Basically Pharaoh. I am studying Pharaoh. If you saw my video about uh, the spirit of slavery, I did a study on slavery in the Bible and what it looks like, what it entails, what it does to a person. It's very, very, very interesting. And as I kept reading through Exodus, I started thinking about, I don't know, Pharaoh stuck out to me because, like, obviously you had the Israelites who were enslaved to the Egyptians, right? And Pharaoh was in charge. But Pharaoh was basically like the master or put himself over Israel as their God. As their God. And so it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting studying Pharaoh because, like, I had a few thoughts when I had first, like, read through it. I was like, okay, clearly Pharaoh is highly prideful. Highly, highly, highly. And so I'm like, there's the spirit of Leviathan, but also that spirit of Jezebel, because Pharaoh was definitely trying to manipulate them. So there was witchcraft as well, right? Like we know that Pharaoh had his magicians and stuff like that, so they practiced witchcraft in that aspect. But the fact that he was even manipulating, the word actually says that if you break down the word witchcraft, it actually means control. So when someone's controlling or manipulating you, they're actually practicing witchcraft. So there's many people that's actually practicing witchcraft and don't even realize it. Another thing I thought about was Pharaoh probably was a reprobate mind. You know, obviously these are my thoughts before, not before doing the study, but well, yeah, before I did the study, like I went back because I read through it again, and then I went back like, wait, there's a lot of stuff I saw here, so let me take it a little slower. And I did look up reprobate mind. It's mentioned in the Old Testament and the New Testament, so it basically means to reject, despise, and refuse. And in Romans 1:28 says, even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do to do things which are not convenient. And then when you go into the scripture, it actually tells you those, what those things are and everything. So yeah. And it's just another thing also too that was in the back of my mind, but I'm not going to be getting into that today, is how America, like how does this apply to America? Because slavery actually still exists. It may not be in the physical aspect, but it's mental. And the government system has so many people in bondage. The government system is literally Egypt. Like, just looks different. Very crafty, by the way. But that's not the point of this. But it may get your mind thinking, because these concepts still apply today. The same thing is literally still happening today, but people don't see it. So they're actually still bound, still enslaved. And if you did watch the previous video, when you look up slavery, it actually just means servitude. What happened is the servitude got perverted because there's a proper way to serve. But unfortunately, because of fear, pride, and other things, people use manipulation and control to, what is the word I'm looking for? To suppress a nation, you know? So, I don't even think I wrote this. I already spoke about that in the old video. Go look at the other video first before this one, okay? Because it's important. So please Go do that. All right. So Pharaoh and his minions. Okay, that's what they are. They're his minions. All right. Um, so the first place. So with the plagues, right? Which I actually want to go back and do this study too. So each plague was based off of a god that the Egyptians worshipped. So basically, God is like, no, I am the one true. Like, I am the God over those gods. Okay? Like, I am the one, the Alpha, the Omega. So the first plague, the water turned to blood. Okay? So in that part, Pharaoh's minions did the same thing, right? They were able to turn the water into blood. Pharaoh turned around, went into his house, and he didn't take nothing to heart, right? He like, oh, whatever. I can do that too. Your God ain't big. All right, whatever, Moses. Like, I can do the same thing. Homie was matching energy, okay? He was matching energy. So I'm like, okay, Pharaoh. Okay. That's in Exodus 7. Exodus 8. Exodus 8 is the second plague, which is the frogs. Again, his minions were able to copy that action and they brought frogs upon the land in Egypt. Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and he asked Yah to take the frogs away and his people, and he would let the people go so they can sacrifice unto Yahuwah. And then Moses said to Pharaoh, you make the choice, and asked him when when should he pray and ask Yah to take the frogs away. So this part was, there's a few things just within that. And again, I encourage you to read these chapters, right? Again, it was the same thing of matching energy. Oh well, okay, you gave frog that you was able to, bring frogs upon the land. We can do that too. But you know what's so interesting? When you match energy, you actually wind up hurting yourself. Like you think that you're proving a point to someone else, but you're actually hurting yourself. So all they did was bring more plague among themselves upon their own land. And I'm like, did they not realize that? I'm like, make it make sense. So I'm just like, huh, okay, all right, matching energy. You know what? Let me write that down because that's a whole thing. It's a whole thing in itself. Matching energy. It's not hurting the other person. It's hurting you. Learn from Pharaoh. Don't be a Pharaoh. Okay. So the other thing that was interesting is when Moses said to Pharaoh, "You make the choice," and asked him when he should pray and ask Yah to take the frogs away. And the reason why is because I don't know if you've ever conversed with someone who's very prideful. Now like the highest form of pride, because there are layers. There's layers to pride. Okay, pride has many faces. So just because you say somebody's prideful, it might not look like the big boastful pride. But Pharaoh, there's hard heartedness involved. There's a stony heart or a brick wall that's you know, and that causes someone to exalt themselves above, whether they realize it or not. Sometimes people can actually appear humble, and it's actually pride. This is why I say it. It has many faces. So with Pharaoh, he was like the utmost. Okay, like he was up there, up there. So we would call that a narcissist, right? Now, someone with narcissistic behaviors, homie was a narcissist, I would say. That's what Judy would say. He was a narcissist. All right. And when you come, but in general, when you communicate with someone who deals with pride, when you speak to them, whatever you say goes through one ear, it gets all jambled and twisted up, and then they hear it a different way. And so it's just like, that's not what I said. It's not what I said, or they'll twist the words and use it back at you. It's like they take the words that you give them and literally form a fiery dart and throw it right back at you. And it's like, whoa. So I just found it interesting that Moses gave Pharaoh the choice, because it's like, okay, well, this guy is not going to clearly hear me. So when you talk to someone who does not have the ears to hear, there is there are specific communication tools that you use. And me working in mental health and helping people navigate how to communicate with others and things like that is very interesting. That's I think that's why it stood out to me, honestly, because at the end of the day, Pharaoh would not be able to say, well, you said, you said. Yeah, there were things that Moses told him, but when it came to the decision making, Pharaoh had to make his own decisions, and he needed to be responsible for the consequence and not have a situation where he'll try to blame Moses, because it's like, you made that choice. You said this, but if you ain't here to it, then you just did this to yourself. Don't be trying to throw me in your mess that you put on yourself. All right. Because at the end of the day, a person worships themselves. That's what pride does. Pride leads a person to worship themselves. Just FYI, if you didn't know that. All right, so Yah answered the request, and Pharaoh saw that everything was good. The frogs were only in the Nile now, but Pharaoh still had a prideful heart, hard-hearted, and still wouldn't listen, just like Abba said. Okay, then you have the third plague, which are the gnats. So the minions, Pharaoh's minions, tried to produce the gnats and they couldn't. So here is the first time that they were trying to match energy. It didn't work. Like they were like, oh well, we're gonna do the same thing because we can do the same thing. Like your God ain't bigger than ours. And they're like, oh, wait, I can't do that. And they told Pharaoh, they were like, yo, this is the finger of Yah. Like, this is the finger of Yah. Like, something that, this is different. This is different. This is different. They knew right then and there. But guess what? Pharaoh was still hard hearted, did not listen. Did not listen. Fourth plague, swarm of flies. Yah had Moses get up early to catch Pharaoh out getting water. I also found that interesting. He was he was warned, Pharaoh was warned to let Yah's people go. Well, more like commanded to let his people go, so they may worship him. Yah told Pharaoh, if not, the flies are coming and my people in Goshen will get special treatment. No flies will be there. This is a way to let Pharaoh know that Yah was in the land. Another way, because all of these plagues have shown that Yah was in the land and he's in control, right? But what I guess when I read this, I just saw it as a very distinct sign that there was a difference between Pharaoh's people and Yah's people. He's like, these people are mine. They are separated from you. Because before, everything was just together. The whole early thing, there's another part, I feel like. Maybe that was just the one part. But with him getting up early, I was like, it seemed like Pharaoh was kind of like hiding in his house. And so I'm like, why Moses got to get up early? Like, shouldn't he be able to approach Pharaoh like any time? And I just like, why did they say early? And so what I gathered from that is he was keeping to himself. You know what I mean? Because if somebody's trying to hide, they're gonna do their stuff earlier in the day while people are still sleeping or still resting or not really getting their day started, so that way they can get their stuff done and then be good for the rest of the day, and they can just tuck away. Like, no, he thought he was slick. So Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Go sacrifice to your God in the land." Mind you, we're still on the swarm of flies. And said, "Go sacrifice to your God in the land." Moses was like, "No, y'all pagan practices are detestable to Yahuwah." And then also too, if they were actually going to sacrifice in the land, Egypt, the Egyptians don't serve Yah. So the Egyptians would stone them. And that is where like the compromise, I started to see the compromising beginning because the Pharaoh was trying to get Moses to compromise. And that looks like, oh, well, you want to do this? Fine, you can do this, but XYZ. Or you can do this only, but only if blah, 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 blah. You know, there's always some like restriction. And you'll see that as I keep going. And I'm like, that's also interesting too. Because that's something that happens in relationships. So Moses was very specific, and I love that Moses was very clear. Like Yah's instructions were very clear for Moses, and I'm like, wow. So Moses was specific, and he said we need a 3-day distance in the wilderness and sacrifice to Yah as Yah instructs. Now, mind you, I am paraphrasing here, right? But you're gonna go and read this for yourself, right? So Pharaoh said, "Okay, cool. I will let you go and sacrifice to your God in the wilderness, but don't go far." How you gonna tell somebody how far to go? The wilderness is the wilderness, but don't go far. Okay, Pharaoh. He asked Moses to go to Yah, supplicate, and intercede for him. Moses did, but when the swarm of flies were gone, Pharaoh hardened his heart and didn't let the people go. So he's been asking Moses, to intercede for him and pray for him so this stuff can go away. But then soon as it goes away, but he going right back to the nonsense, being hard hearted and don't want to let Yah's people go. And I did look up hardened, and it means like heavy, to be of a heavy weight. And sometimes you'll see like liver in the Bible is equated to heaviness as well, because it's like like a heaviness, heavy organ. It's blah, blah, blah. It's considered the heaviest organ. So it's like someone that is heavy in weight, wealth, abundance, importance, or respect. So it depends on like how it's used. But we know that Pharaoh's heart was heavy. Bunch of stones. For sure. For sure. For sure. For sure. All right. So, fifth plague, the death of livestock. So, Yah had Moses to go tell, Pharaoh about the death of the livestock. And his livestock is going to die, whatever. And then Yah made a distinct between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Egypt. So nothing of the Israelites' own will die. So again, he made it clear to Pharaoh, like, hey, your livestock is going to die, but the livestock of the Israelites will not. Clear separation. I can only imagine what was going through Pharaoh's head. Like, are you kidding me right now? I don't know. It could have been all types of emotions and feelings. But rather than humbling himself and expressing that and go and saying like, yo, let me give myself to this God who is just almighty and powerful. Nope, what does he do? He stays to himself, keeps everything in, and he's just getting harder and harder and harder and harder. And And another thing of with Pharaoh being in his own mind thinking, he actually sent the messengers, his messengers, minions, to Goshen and saw that the Israelites' livestock were alive. And that's why I was like, he had to be in his own mind thinking about a lot of stuff in this process because he had to go see for himself. He like, nah, let me go see that. I need to go see for myself. And he saw that and he probably like, yo, like this is really getting real. But nope, he wouldn't humble himself. Sixth plague, the boils. The minions couldn't stand before Moses because the boils were on them and the people. So they couldn't even try to up one them. Like they were down for the count. Like they were down. And Yah hardened Pharaoh's heart, and Pharaoh still ain't listen. So the one thing in the pattern, one of the patterns that I saw is that Yah hardened Pharaoh's heart. And one of the things I've just always thought about in general when I heard this story, and I'm like, well, why is Yah hardening his heart? Because I'm like, well, why would Yah do that? Because it's almost like forcing the Pharaoh to have a hard heart, so all these plagues can come upon him and stuff. And I'm like, if Yah didn't do that, would Pharaoh have humbled himself? But the thing is, the reality is, Yah is all seeing. He's all knowing. So he already knew what was going to happen beforehand anyway. And because of that, he turned him over because when you choose to do something, like when you anything that you choose to do, you're serving. Okay? So if you choose to serve Yah, your direction is going to be facing him. But for Pharaoh, Pharaoh's like, I don't want nothing to do with you. I'm going to do this, because these things are bigger than you. So guess what? Pharaoh's direction is all over here. And Yah gives us free will. That's really not as free as we think it is. Like, yes, we have the freedom to choose whether to serve him or not. But once you make that decision, let me explain this differently. You have the decision and the free will to choose Yah, and you have the decision and the free will to choose the world, right? Everything outside of Yah. And people who choose the world, they're outside of Yah, right? People choose Yah. Wait, oh my gosh, I'm like freaking confusing myself right now. Hold on, let me get my life together because my brain is trying to play games with me. Okay, this is what I was trying to say. You got those who choose Yah, you got those who choose the world, and then you got the people in the middle. The people in the middle, or they're just like, oh, we have the free will. This is what I meant. This is what I was trying to say. People are like, oh, we have free will, we have free will. Okay, but if you're not following Yah by default, it does not matter. You are automatically following the world because he is very clear in his instructions, in his direction, in his word, how we are supposed to walk this life out. Okay. And so when someone walks outside of that, by default, they're already worshiping the other side. It's literally. Now, the blessing and the mercy of Yah is when people do choose the world, they can go back. You know what I mean? They can say, I want to return back to Yah and actually repent, and change their lifestyle and allow him to do a work through them and in them, on them, actually, on them, do a work on them so they can transform and shift and make a change in their life and then help others make a change in theirs. You know, hopefully I cleared that up because that was a whole hot mess moment. But okay, so even with hardening, the heart, because right, that brought the judgment. um I thought about how, like, Judgment is actually mercy. And I know it's hard to hear, like, well, those are bad things happening. Well, we got to think about what seeds people sow. When people sow seeds, it's going to grow into something. It's either going to grow in the fruit of the spirit, or it's going to grow into the works of the flesh. Clearly, Pharaoh was working under the works of the flesh. So when you have that, judgment has to happen. Like, judgment is going to happen, because now it's like, okay, you made your clear decision. So that gives the enemy reign, rule, and dominion to go pop, pop, beep, bop, 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 boom, boom, kaboom, and play all up in your face. Okay. And we have to remember too that at the end of the day, the enemy has to get permission from Yah, because the enemy is very legalistic. Like, he knows the law. Like, he knows the law. So he knows spiritual law. And so he's like, oh, there's this open door over here. That gives me right to do that. This open door. And what do you think? Yah's going to be like, well, all right, cool. Yah uses all things for our good, right? So guess what? That judgment is going to cause us to cry out to him and be like, Abba, I need you. I realize that I was wrong facing this other direction. I want you. I turn my heart and my mind back to you. I repent for those things that I've done. But again, Pharaoh didn't want to do that. Pharaoh didn't want to do that. So this judgment was mercy. Okay. Which we'll actually see later on, Yah's mercy and grace within this judgment, because you actually start to see the hearts of the Egyptians shift, some of them. And when it even when I was mentioning for judgment to turn the hearts of the people, that is the function of judgment. I should probably do a study on judgment too, now that I'm thinking about it. Because I feel like that's something that we really need to understand, especially the times that we live in. Like, all of this stuff happens for a reason. There's nothing on this earth that just happened just because. I don't care what anybody tell you. It's not just because. There's always a reason. The problem is, we may not always understand the reason. We might not, yeah, we just might not understand it, or can even comprehend it, depending on what it is. All right. So, the seventh plague, hail. Again, Moses had to get up early, which I found interesting, to present himself to Pharaoh. Yah said to Pharaoh, this is in Exodus 9:16, that you can find this, by the way, because I know I kind of stopped telling y'all what chapters we were necessarily in. Hold on, what's going on? I don't know if I wanted to read it or not. Okay. Yeah, okay. So Exodus 9:16, I will let you live to show you my power and to make my name known on the earth. But Pharaoh was still arrogant and exalted himself against the people. And then in Exodus 9:17, it continues to say, still you exalt yourself against my people by not letting them go. And I looked up exalted thyself. Oh, actually, I just read that in the NASB version. The KJV version, I gotta slow down, says, as yet exalteth thou thyself against my people, that thou will not let them go. And so I looked up exalted thyself. It means to lift up yourself. Remember, I was talking about pride. Pride lifts you up. Yep. And then it also it's interesting because the abstract definition of that is to compare, which is so interesting because isn't that what sometimes people do? They compare, like, oh well, I don't understand why this person got this or blah 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 blah. Like I am the better one. I'm the one that got this. I'm the one that blah blah blah. So it's like what that does is it puffs up and it lifts you up. And Yah said, Thus saith Yahuwah of the Hebrews, Let my people go, that they may serve me. For I will at this time send my plagues upon thy heart, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, that thou mayest know that there is none like me in all the land. Okay, okay. That's great. And hold on. All right. Also, too. Wait. Okay, so what I'm getting into now, I don't think I mentioned it, is the seventh plague, which is hail. The seventh plague is hail. In Exodus 9:15, for if by now I have put forth my hand and struck you and your people with pestilence, you would then have been cut off from the earth. And I'm referencing this scripture because, when it comes to pestilence, right? When it comes to these plagues and different things like that, especially even now, you hear a lot of, oh, pestilence, pestilence. And it's like, what is pestilence? Pestilence actually, it means a plague, which means the reordering of a population. Because remember, Hebrew breaks things down by its function. So I just found it interesting that I'm like, the concrete definition is like it reorders a population. I'm like, oh my gosh, it really does because like it's sad, but like think about the pandemic. That was a plague. That was a plague, and it literally did reorder the population. It reduced it. It reduced it. All right. So the Pharaoh is going to get the worst hail that has ever occurred in Egypt from the day it was founded until now. The worst hail in history. I can only imagine. But you know what's so interesting though? Because when you think about all of the stuff that's been going on right now, with like it's some of the weather, people are like, oh, it's snowing in Florida. I haven't seen snow in 34 years, or there's just certain stuff like that. Like, there are places where it's like, oh, this is the worst hurricane that has ever come in history, and it's just like, whoa. I don't know, just to put it into perspective of like what was going through their minds at that time, especially for Pharaoh to like hear that. Like, homie had to be fearful. He had to be fearful, but he chose fight. Okay, some people fear and they'll start fighting. Some people fear they will run. Some people fear they will freeze, and some people fear and they will run into people pleasing. He chose to fight. I feel like there was some freezing there too, and that's why and some hiding because he hid. He was hiding too on a low low. It just looked a little different than typical, but yeah. So anyway, Yah showed Yah showed mercy yet again by giving clear directions. And first of all, Yah showed mercy each and every time because he told him what was going to happen. Like, he actually gave him a chance to do what was right. That is mercy. That is mercy. Yah didn't have to do that. He could just have been like, well, I'm just going to send this stuff upon them for no reason. But what would that really, like, what? just doing it for no reason. Like Yah was clear on what the reason was. Like that. Yeah. So Yah showed mercy yet again by giving clear directions. My thoughts are that Yah saw the hearts of those following Pharaoh and provided them instructions out of that grace and mercy. And they were instructed to bring the livestock into the fields and shelters and everything into shelters. So he gave them what to do to protect themselves. He said, "This is coming, and this is what you need to do to protect yourself." Okay. Anyone outside, man, livestock, will die if not in shelter. Those among Pharaoh's officials who feared the word of Yahuwah made the servants and livestock flee to shelters, and those who didn't heed the word to Yah left what they had in the field. Now, this part right here, let me see if I can find it. Hold on. Any land. Yeah, because, obviously the Israelites in Goshen didn't experience any hell. Continue. Moses stretched out his staff. This is in Exodus 9. I'm just trying to find which scripture. Okay, it's Exodus 9 verse 20. The one among the servants of Pharaoh who feared the word of the Lord made his servants and his livestock flee into the houses. But he who paid no regard to the word of the Lord left his servants and his livestock in the field. So you see what started to happen. People started to fear Yahuwah. They started to fear him, which is a good thing. It's a great thing. And the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom. So those who actually took heed and listened, they were wise. They were very, very wise. They became wise that day. And they started to see, like, oh no, this is the one true God. Like, I'm listening to him. you know. But isn't that the purpose of judgment? What I was just talking about not too long ago. That's the purpose of judgment, to turn the hearts back to Yah. But unfortunately, not everybody does. The hail shattered every plant, every tree was destroyed. No hail in Goshen where the Israelites were. So then Pharaoh started to switch his tune. He admitted to sinning. And that was interesting because I was like, okay. So it's now, this is interesting, right? Because it's like you be like, oh, he admitted it. Like, that's humbleness. Oh, no. He was just being slick and very strategic. That's what that was. And that's why you got to pay attention. Okay? That's why you got to pay attention. If you are able to identify the system that you're in, that you're caught up in, and the Pharaoh, who the Pharaoh is in your life, or sometimes we even say the Goliath, but in this aspect, the Pharaoh, you will learn. You have to sometimes study the Pharaoh to see, wait, what is going on here? What are the patterns? Because if you don't know their patterns, you're going to get caught up. You're going to continue to get caught up in those patterns. Okay? Get what's that? Wrapped back up. You're going to get wrapped back up in their game, in their little game. So Pharaoh switched his tune. He admitted to sinning and said, Yah is righteous, and stated him and his people are wicked. So he admitted that him and his people are wicked and Yah is righteous. All right, cool. Okay, all right. And he requested an appeal to Yahuwah. All right, cool. He said he will let them go. He had enough of the thunder and hail. You don't have to stay any longer. Let me see. Okay, this part cracks me up. So I'm in Exodus 9. I'm in verse 29 now. Verse 29 and then 30. And Moses said unto him, as soon as I go out of the city, I will spread out my hands to the Lord, and thunder will cease, and there will be hail no longer, that you may know that the earth is the Lord's. Wait, hold on. Oh, okay. I'm good on time. All right. But but listen to this what Moses said after that. But as for you and your servants, I know that you do not yet fear the Lord God. So he saw through that. Moses saw through the nonsense, okay? He saw through the nonsense. Because it's so easy that people be like, oh, well, he did admit, or she did admit that, what they did was a sin. And they admitted that was right. Okay, are they changing their behavior though? Are their words matching their actions? Does it match? It should all come together. Because guess what? Once the hail, rain, and thunder stopped, he sinned again, hardened his heart, and he and his officials did not let the Israelites go. And sometimes this is how people get caught up in that cycle, because they give someone a different, they give someone another chance, or they just hang on to their words for dear life. And those person's words literally are just air. Like you can't grab air. So you're trying to grab on words that are just air. And because you can forgive a person, right? You can forgive them. You should forgive them. But you also with that, you have to be wise and have boundaries and see a change behavior. You know, doesn't mean you just walk right back into the situation, just blindfolded, and then you just caught up again. Because then guess what? They did all of that. They did everything else to appease you and get you to trust them again and all of this other stuff, and then went right back to do the same thing. That's what Pharaoh does. He give you all the good words, but then go right back to do the same thing. All right. So when Pharaoh was told about the next thing was the locust. That's the eighth plague. Yah told Moses they had hardened his heart. Wait, Yah told Moses, I had hardened his heart of his officials, so that I may do these miraculous signs of mine among them, so that you may tell your son and grandson how severely I dealt with the Egyptians and performed miraculous signs among them. And you will know that I am Yahuwah. So once Moses was told about the locust, Pharaoh's minions asked him, how long must this man be a snare to us? Let the men go. They may worship Yahuwah their God. Don't you realize yet that Egypt is devastated? Like, they actually talking to Pharaoh like, yo, what is your problem? Like, let them go. Like, don't you see we here suffering? Like, what's up? But that pride, it keeps the blinders on. It's the scales. Leviathan has scales. Those scales are on his eyes. So even though something is right in front of his face, the common sense is right in front of his face, he's blinded. He does not have the ears to hear, and he does not have the eyes to see. But them blinders fell off of his minions though. So Moses and Aaron were brought back, and Pharaoh said, go worship Yahuwah your God. But who is exactly going? So now he's saying, go. You can go worship. Go ahead. Go do your thing. But I want to know who's going. There you go. He want to be in control. He little details. Moses said the young and the old sons and daughters. Oh, the young and the old sons and daughters, flocks, herds, because we must hold Yahuwah's festival. Exodus 10, 11. Exodus chapter 10, 10 through 11. Pharaoh stated that they were plotting evil. I'm paraphrasing. Pharaoh was big mad because he knew that if they left, even with the little kids, they ain't coming back. He knew if all them people left, they ain't coming back. They are not coming back. Okay? So Pharaoh was like, nope, only the men can go. Everybody else got to stay. The men can go. And that's why I was just like, okay. So he had a Jezebel spirit too. Because now he's trying to be in control of, he's trying to be in control of the situation. And trying to manipulate. And so that goes back to the enemy twisting what you say to make it seem like he's giving you what you want. But that's really far from the truth, y'all. Okay? He'll make it sound like you're getting what you want, but it's actually a deception. There's always something that is not what it really is. It just appears to be a thing, but it's really not. You know, because some people will fall for that and be like, all right, you know what? Fine, I'll compromise. You know, I am supposed to be free. I shouldn't be in this situation, but they're willing to do this, so that's fine. I'll do that. If they're willing to do this, then cool. I can do that. That's compromising. Are we supposed to be compromising? If they would have compromised, they would have still been in bondage. So the east wind blew over the land all day and night and brought in locusts. These locusts were one. I mean, these locusts were on everything that the land. Wait, what the heck did I write? Oh, those locusts were on everything, and the land was black, and it ate up everything too, and left behind by the hailstorm. So everything the hailstorm left behind and didn't destroy, the locusts ate it. So basically, everything was gone at this point. Again, Pharaoh admitted to sinning. Okay. He has to be forgiven again. Okay. Made an appeal to Yahuwah. Okay. So that way he can take death away from him. All right, cool. Yah hardened his heart and didn't let the Israelites go. Because on the outward, right, you see like, oh well, he repented for it. He asked to be forgiven. But Yah knows what's inside the heart. And what when we say heart, we always think of emotions and feelings. Your heart is really your mind. It's really like what's in your mind, your real thoughts, in your subconscious mind, your will. So although Pharaoh was speaking with his mouth, in his mind, he was like, I ain't letting them people go, man. Screw that. So his heart just got hardened even more. But the west wind, I forgot to mention, the west wind did come, you know, and blow the locust into the Red Sea, which is so interesting about wind because I did a short study on wind. Wind is very interesting. Uh yeah, I might have to share that soon too. But anyway, the ninth plague, the darkness. So that's in Exodus chapter 10, verse 21 and on. The darkness was sent that could be felt, a thick darkness for 3 days. And I was like, what does that mean that a darkness so thick that it can be felt? And I looked up felt in Hebrew. It means to grope, like a groping around in the darkness to find something. So like I guess like that darkness was just so dark that like they literally it was like being blind. I can only imagine. Cuz even like if you turn your lights off, right, at night, you still have something to work off of. Like you can kind of see a little light reflection out of the like blinds even with your blinds being closed. People have a stove in their kitchen, so that light reflects, so you can tell I'm about to bump into the table, let me move, but you still got to be careful right where you're at. But a pitch black, that had to be wild. I don't know if you ever been in the woods at night. I went camping one time, and even with the flashlight, yo, it's dark, like it's like dark, like with no light pollution. I was like, oh, you know what? Now that I think about that, I didn't think about that before when I was reading this, but yeah, that's some thick darkness. Okay, I get it now. I surely get it now. So Pharaoh summoned Moses and said, go worship Yah. Get this. Everyone can go. Your families can go, right? But guess what? Your flocks and herds need to stay behind. Here we go with that compromise. He tried it again, being slick and sly. So Yahuwah hardened his heart, and he still ain't let the people go. So in Exodus 10:28, Pharaoh said unto Moses, get thee from me, take heed to thyself, see my face no more. For in that day thou seest my face, thou shalt die. And I'm like, and then Moses replied, thou hast spoken well. I will see thy I will see thy face again no more. And I'm like, did Pharaoh like put a curse on Moses? Like, leave me, like leave me be. Like, you know what I mean? The next time I see your face, you gonna be dead. And but it's just interesting because Moses responds and be like, cool, I won't see your face no more. Whatever. I'm bothered. So then we get to the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn. And I'm actually gonna end here because this after the 10th plague, I am gonna um, come back because there's just so much that happened that come out of this 10th plague. So we know that as the death of the firstborn. Yah said one more plague on Pharaoh in Egypt, right? So when you follow Pharaoh, what I got out of that is when you follow Pharaoh, you reap and get everything they get. There's no separation. So it's like at that point you had a separation. You had the Israelites in Goshen already, right? Um, then you had Pharaoh and the Egyptian people. In the beginning, they were all experiencing the things, and Yah was like, "Nah, my people not experiencing this stuff. They're not doing that." And then some of the Egyptians was like, "Nah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good on this stuff. I'm following him. I'm following this God right here. I'm following the gods above all gods." And so everyone that followed Pharaoh, they experienced the same issues as Pharaoh. And that really made me think about when we have idols or we follow people or we place things that are higher in our life, like uh, you're going to reap what they reap because you're following the same thing. So that means you're coming into agreement with the same thing. So if they're getting attacked because of XYZ, guess what? You're going to get attacked from XYZ too. And so that was interesting. That was something else that had stood out to me with that. And Yah said too with the whole death of the firstborn, he told Moses, when he lets you go, he will drive you out of there. So this is going to be the part where Pharaoh's going to be like, "Get out, bye, go." Yah gave Moses Pharaoh. Yah gave Moses favor in the sight of Pharaoh's minions and in the sight of the people. Both men and women were instructed to ask their neighbors for silver and gold. And then you have all like the steps of the plague where Yah said at midnight, "I'm gonna go through Egypt. Every firstborn male will die from Pharaoh's palace to the servant girl. There will be a great cry of anguish through the land of Egypt as there was never before, ever will be again." I can only imagine that night, the cries, the cries that happened. And with this plague, I know I mentioned, there was a clear distinction, but everyone had to follow this. Like Yah was clear. He gave these instructions to Israel, but then also there were Egyptians who took heed. They took heed to this as well. And they had to follow those same instructions. So whoever was in there and did not follow, their firstborns were going to be dead. All the officials will bow down before Yah, saying, "Leave you." And all the people who follow you after that, I will leave. Moses left the presence of Pharaoh in great anger. Yah said to Moses, "Pharaoh won't listen again." So, wait, what? Oh, yeah, so my word will be multiplied in the land at Egypt. Take the blood of the lamb and smear it on the doorpost so the death angel passes over. And I'm ending I'm ending here because it gets into the instructions of Passover, but well, actually I have a little more. Hold on before I even get into that. Pharaoh had called Moses and Aaron and said, "Rise up and get forth from among my people," because basically the angel of death passed over. Everyone had to put the blood on the doorpost, the blood of the lamb, and there were very clear instructions on how that had to happen, and that's where the Passover was birthed. Um, yeah, so Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, "Rise up and get you forth from among my people. Take everyone, you, women, men, children, flocks, herd, be gone, and also bless me." It was interesting that he asked for a blessing. I don't know. I just found that interesting. If y'all find some insight into that, please let me know because I'm very curious. I've been thinking about that. Like, why he keep asking for a blessing? Like, is it because he thinks maybe he's just hoping that something good will happen out of the situation, although he's not putting action towards it? Like I would love some insight about what y'all think. But this is interesting too. The other thing is everyone needed to be circumcised if partaking in the Passover because everyone needed to be on one accord. They needed to be in covenant with Yah. And this goes back to there were Egyptians amongst the Israelites who said, "Hey, I want to serve the God that you serve." What do we call that? Gentiles today? There were Gentiles in the Old Testament, y'all. There were Gentiles in the Old Testament. As long as they were under the same, when they follow Yah, everyone was together under the same covenant as one people. Okay, so here's where I'm officially stopping. And the reason why is because, which I'm still having to go back to myself with studying the Passover, because not only did we get the Passover that we are to continue to keep in remembrance by practicing, obviously it looks different, when it comes to the New Testament. We know this. Or maybe some people really don't know that, but that's a whole other thing. But we still are supposed to um, do the Passover to this day. And then we also got the New Year, which is pretty cool as well. And I the date is January 29th. I actually do not celebrate the new year as as January 1st, because the new year is actually in spring, where things are actually coming back. There is growing back and birthing. Like, this is a time of uh I don't know what to really call the winter time, because it's a time of like resting, but it's not resting in the way of like sleeping per se for us humans. It's like one of those times to just like, pull in a little more, seek Yah a little more, be present with Him, and, get done what you need to get done. Sow those seeds, start sowing those seeds, so then that way when the spring comes, they will start to grow. That's how He showed me the winter time. It's a time of planting. It's a time of planting. And then those, spring starts sprouting, and summertime is like bloom. So it's interesting. It's interesting. But yeah, uh, a lot has come out of this. So I will be back with the rest of this slavery thing. But I want to leave you with, what is the Pharaoh in your life, or what are the Pharaohs of your life? Okay, the Pharaohs can be a people or a person, a place, places, or things. People, places, or things. So take that to Yah. Allow Him to speak to you, and I pray that you get set free from your Pharaoh. Because guess what? Pharaoh, his little stubborn butt wasn't done. So we gotta come back to see, as you try to get set free, what is the other part of what Pharaoh's gonna do? Because we see Pharaoh try to cause you to compromise, and he'll try to manipulate you and gaslight you into thinking that you're getting set free, and you're really not. So y'all be blessed, and I will catch you next time.